All right, it's John Benson with Sales Copy Secrets here, and I got to say, first of all, how excited I am to have not only one of my big time role models, big time mentors, but also a very good friend, Todd Brown, with me today. Say hello, Todd. It's great to have
What's
you.
up, everybody? I would say the same thing about you. I'm thrilled to be here, man, to be with one of my role models, one of my biggest inspirations, and a friend, man. And so, as always, I love spending time with you, and I love talking copy. There's always some crazy light bulb moments, many light bulb moments for me that go off.
Yeah.
And so, any chance I get, man, to talk copy and swipes and conversions with you, I take it.
Awesome. Well, we're going to have a great conversation. I want to start by saying, first of all, apologies. I have not posted a video, which is uncharacteristic of me since I started the channel in, I think, 2 or 3 weeks. And I think we posted like one a couple of weeks ago. And that's because my wife and I moved to a new place, and it's just moving traumas, like getting new cycles down and getting, we're shooting outside now. So I have to wait for the weather to be just right. So it's been some of that kind of stuff. And we've been inundated with multiple promos for multiple products of ours, and I knew I had to commit some time to this, so I said, okay, I might as well kick back into, because we are kicking back into YouTube videos, getting right back into it this week. So why not kick it off with an interview with Todd Brown? Now this is going to be pretty interesting because we're talking about something that Todd does have an offer that's going on right now. And that's one of the reasons we're chatting with you today. But the other reason is because I was about to tell you, Todd, I didn't get to finish it before the timer kicked on. Todd and I were watching a fight together over the weekend with Rich Sheffer and Mike Fulsame and a whole bunch of other people. And I came up to Todd. I was going to go, hey, Todd, can you step outside so we can film a quick YouTube video for my YouTube guys? Because I want to make sure these guys are not just left in the desert here. And then it kind of hit me. Oh yeah, let's do this live. Let's do this because it'll coincide with everything. So we're here to give you a ton of value. We're going to talk about swipe copy. That doesn't sound like a huge hot topic for copywriters, but it really is. And I'm going to unveil something for you in a little bit. These are stacked up like literally this high on my desk. This is like a massive thing that Todd's going to talk about today. But why I think swipe copy holds the secret to becoming a better copywriter much faster. I'm going to get Todd to dish some of his secrets for how to use swipe copy to where you don't sound like everybody else. And I'm going to give you my own ways of how I use swipe copy to help propel me past that blinking cursor of doom that we hate looking at when we're copywriters. So let's dive in, Todd. Let's start right with the meat here. Tell me what drove the inspiration to put this thing together, because it is, I don't know how many pages there are. It looks like 5 phone books.
I'll tell you, I'll give you the quick snippet so everybody has a little context, and then I'll tell you kind of what the madness behind how this thing came about. So it's 4,000 pages.
Wow.
It's 22.4 pounds. And it is over a decade of everything mailed out by the best marketers on the planet. Now, when I say mailed out, I mean the stuff they paid big money to send in the mail. So everything mailed out by Dan Kennedy and Jay Abraham and Russell Brunson and Frank Kern and Caleb O'Dowd and the Agora companies and Newsmax and Robert Kiyosaki, and it goes on and on and on. Mm-hmm. So for close to 13 years, 13 years ago, I wanted to get on the lists of as many of the best marketers, the best direct response companies that I could. The reason why I wanted to get on their list is because for some, I wanted to see their front end promotions. For others, I wanted to be able to see their back end promotions. And I wanted to get on their lists for direct mail because I knew and know that many of the best marketers will send things out in direct mail that never, ever appear online. And so, right, like the things that they, like sequences, campaigns. And so that's why some of the lists, some folks I had to buy products and subscribe to crazy newsletters and all this.
Right.
And then for this over a decade, I saved it all. And so in that what we call the decade plus swipe file is 4,000 pages. There are promotions, first of all, of every type. So there are letters, there are postcards, there are magalogs, there are bookalogs, you name it. Every format that you can imagine for direct mail is in there. And there's also promotions for, for everything from low ticket, mid tier, high ticket, for webinars, for physical products, for digital products, for strategy sessions, affiliate offers, and everything in between, like everything you can imagine, obviously over a decade. And I did it the whole time, really, just for me. Like for me, it was a tool that, and I'll tell you, I'll give you the kind of the tip, if you will, or the major benefit to me, which anybody can do. It was all for me. It was just, I wanted to be able to see the strategies that they were using, the stuff that they were doing offline that they weren't doing online. And there's often a lot, the types of offers that they were using offline and how were they presenting their offers? What kind of follow-up were they doing offline that they weren't doing online? I just wanted to see it all. And it was, and it is been an incredible education for me. The big thing for me very early on was, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about this, but I knew that, like, look, I've read, like many folks maybe listening, I read all the copy books, back in the day. I probably have been through every copy course on the planet. But what I found for me was that the single biggest factor in improving my copywriting skills was regularly reading a lot of good copy. And I emphasize the word good because, unfortunately, and you could speak to this much more than I can, John. Unfortunately, the majority of copy that we see online is not good copy, right? For the novice or the new copywriter, they think that it's good copy because it sounds like copy, it feels like copy, it has copy, phraseology, it's loaded with adjectives and adverbs. But the reality, right, is that good copy doesn't feel like copy. It doesn't sound like copy. It doesn't come across as copy. Yeah. And so good copy is stealth. Like I've watched some of your VSLs and you don't even realize like how you're being led to just want to buy before the offer is even presented. You're just sucked in and mesmerized. You don't feel like you're being manipulated. That reactance isn't, fired up. You're not on guard. You have aha moments. You feel this feeling of discovery. And so all that's to say that there's a huge difference between the feel, the flow, the vibe, the voice, the communication style between typical copy that you see online and the best of the best that you see offline. And so just by passively reading, not, and we'll talk about actively reading it, but just by passively reading it, for me, that was really where I got the most value. Just reading it often and reading a lot of it. What it allowed me to do was I very quickly found that I started to become in tune with the feel and the flow of good copy, the way that promises were being presented, where they were exciting, but they weren't hyperbole, right? They weren't exaggerated. They weren't puffery, where like they were offering evidence, but they weren't going on and on and on. I very quickly became in tune with how tight it is, how every chunk, right, is serving a purpose, an objective, which we'll talk about. And then when I went like back to typical online copy after having read so much, I was immediately able to be like, man, now I can see clearly why this falls short and why this doesn't perform the same way that legit good copy does. And so that was the first use for me. Just everything that I got and saved, I got it, I read it, I saved it. And then when it was time for me to work on a certain promotion for, of a certain type, I would take out the swipes that I had for that promotion style or that offer price point, and I would peruse them. And then we'll talk about something else that I do and did. But the first thing was just passively reading it, man.
Kind of letting it absorb into you through osmosis almost.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I think look, when you read, for those people that read a lot of fiction, I don't read a lot of fiction. I'd like to read more fiction. But for those that read, a lot of fiction, when you come across a book that's just not well written, it's hard to understand what they're saying. The story is kind of vague and bald, as Clayton Makepeace used to say. you spot it right away, right? And merely because you've consumed so much good fiction that what good fiction sounds like, how good fiction makes you feel, what good fiction does.
Mhm.
So when you come across bad fiction, you're able to spot it right away, and this is off the mark.
Mhm.
The same thing with copy, I believe. How about you?
Yeah.
Do you think that have you read a lot over the years?
I have read a lot. I was a philosophy major, so I get to read a lot. A lot of that wasn't fiction, obviously, but you could find in college. I would find the writers, literature, whatever genre it was, you could just tell that something was. You'd have a feeling about it when you read. It's a way that, for me, it's like, does the story, does it feel like a human being is behind this letter? Does it feel like a human being is behind this story? What is the humanized elements inside of this? In this case, in your case, your example is fiction. If you're reading George R. Martin, how well he humanizes all the aspects of the whole. Every character that he writes is about the inward struggle. For example, there's an inward struggle in every single character that he writes. And then you go and you read bad fiction, or bad literature for that matter, or bad philosophy, and you can see that it's very myopic. It's very insular. It feeds on itself versus something that expands you. And so without getting all this heady stuff that we're just talking about now into copy, I read copy and I can tell, like, are they telling me a story that's interesting? Like, I want to be, not like a story in fiction, but like a story about my problems, a story about a solution that works. And does it sound like he's talking to me as someone who knows me, or someone that is trying to sell something on the phone? So these are like qualifiers that I use. Is the language in this sound like a human being wrote it, and that he's talking to me? That's the first thing that I think of when I'm looking at copy. But it's also what I think of when I think of good literature, when I think of good anything. It's like there's a personal experience going on.
I love it. At some point, man, on a personal note, I so want to have a philosophical just conversation with you, because I know that you're so brilliant in that area, so well read and well versed. And I love when I've seen your Facebook posts, philosophical kind of Facebook posts, and I love it, and it's so just coherent and concise, and just the argument being presented. Like, you and I nerd out on the syllogisms and whatnot. And so we'll save that for a different time when we're together. The other thing, and I want to piggyback on what you said, because you had said, in some form or fashion, you said, like, does it feel like, I'm being sold or pitched? And I think we already talked about, right, how good copy is somewhat stealth. It doesn't trigger that reactance. Reactance is this idea, for those of you listening, that like, when people feel as if they're being manipulated and their freedom of choice is being encumbered on, like, is being taken away, we naturally push back. So when people feel like we're manipulating them, or copy is manipulating them into making a choice, they naturally have resistance to that. It's a natural response to that. And that's also, John, an interesting difference between good copy, and why I love, why I relied on and still rely on direct mail versus the typical stuff that you see online. This is one of the many reasons. Is, it's interesting for me to see, like, copywriters that, many copywriters, many marketers, they know they should use certain, let's say, emotional triggers. They know they should maybe build urgency. They know they want to establish authority, credibility. They, maybe want to tap into reciprocity. The thing is that oftentimes what the novice does to try to establish that urgency, or that authority, or that reciprocity, whatever, is very explicit and apparent, like, to the prospect, meaning the prospect knows what it is that they're trying to do. And I always say, right, a known tactic is a blown tactic, right? If they know what you're trying to do in the copy, or they can sense what it is that you're doing, they can sense that manipulation, then they push back and there's resistance. And that's one of the big differences that I found between between great copy and average copy, really, John, between great marketers and average marketers, is that, average marketers, average copy uses the very explicit kind of standard common approach to these emotional triggers. Whereas the good copywriters, good marketers are always looking for new ways, new tactical ways from a copy perspective to use those same strategies. So it's kind of like, look, the idea of social proof, right, is a principle, for lack of a better word, we could call it a strategy used in copy. There's a purpose behind social proof to show that this is sought after, this is in demand. Other people just like you are clamoring to get their hands on this. But from a tactical perspective, there's a lot of different ways to show social proof, to communicate social proof. What the average copy does is use the stuff that everybody uses, meaning like they're trying to provide social proof. Just as an example, it could be authority, it could be credibility, it could be reciprocity, whatever. They're doing it the same way that everybody else is doing it. And what happens in most markets is the market becomes aware of what they're doing. Reactance, resistance, conversions go down, right? Whereas the great copywriters, the great marketers, ultimately the great copy uses different tactical ways to implement those same strategies. So different ways to provide social proof, different ways to do the takeaway, different ways to create exclusivity, different ways to convey the feeling of community. And so one of the huge benefits to using a good swipe file with legitimate, tested, proven pieces like the decade swipe file is to look for the different ways that they are using the strategies that we all need to use, right? All the principles of good copy, the principles of persuasion, but look at the unique ways that they're doing it so that it works while it's slipping under the radar.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Totally. There's an example that leaps out at me. And by the way, so let me just say that the secret that I wanted Todd to break into is kind of what we're touching base here on now. Is we're looking at positioning rather than words. We're looking at how somebody did something versus the words that they used to do it. So a lot of copywriters get caught up in what are the exact words I should use to create a pattern error, or the exact words I need to use to create a benefit or a bullet. And don't get me wrong, I teach those techniques on this very channel. Like, here are the words that will work for this. But what Todd's talking about is like, okay, they might see something coming. The reader may see something coming. If you position it a certain way, it's the same thing, but it's stealth and it's not seen, and it slips right under the radar. And a great example of this for social proof that leaps out at me is my friend Jason Fladlin, who I guess it was 5-6 years ago now. It's been quite some time when he released his Amazon webinar. And that Amazon webinar, I think, was one of the very first webinars to ever do $10 million. It was like insane. It was like off the charts. So Jason and I became friends shortly after that. And I told him, I said, this is the best one of the best social proof mechanisms I've ever seen, where he said, okay, here's a certificate from my bank. Here's my banker's number. You can call them. We have $1 million in this account, and it's going to sit there to handle all of our it's like, I think it was for a refund. I think it was a guarantee. That's what it was. But it was something like, it's so tactile. You cannot get more tactile than this. I've never seen it done before. But that's an example of, I think this was for a guarantee. So an example of using something everybody's heard, oh, it comes with a money back guarantee if you're not totally satisfied with blah, blah, blah. So everyone's heard that, but no one had ever seen that. And so that's where, if you had Jason's swipe files or Caleb O'Dowd or any other legends that you were just talking about, how much more creative could you be without having to be creative? In other words, you're just spotting what they're doing. And I think that's just a great way to go about things.
Yeah. And I think, man, for what it's worth, like, it's so funny because, you have this like just incredible knack. That doesn't even do justice for, like, you really understand how to move people emotionally as well as intellectually with your words and with the structure of your words and the flow of your words. And I think that, like, you just, I know when you get up at our mastermind that we're in together, like, even the way that you say things, like, everybody's just on the edge of their seat and jacked up, and because you understand really the objective of words and phrases. And that's the thing, to piggyback what you were just saying. It's the second thing that I began to do with the swipe file, which really took, elevated things for me, was then I started to read the copy actively. And really what I mean by that, for me, it was very basic. It was like, look, I recognize that in good copy, especially like direct mail, where the stuff is just dialed and optimized out the wazoo, like, right, it costs big money to send out direct mail campaigns. And so it's typically written by the best copywriters, the best marketers. It's dialed out the wazoo. Oftentimes it's been tested and proven in other mediums and then brought to direct mail. So it's always the best of the best. I know that there's no throwaway sentences or paragraphs, meaning like everything is in there to serve a purpose. Everything is in there to, for an objective. There is something that the writer, the marketer, is trying to accomplish with each chunk of copy. You could even say each sentence, each paragraph, right? It's serving a role. There is an outcome that they are trying to produce, a feeling, an emotion, a belief, a frame, in the prospect. And so when I began to read actively, I then really did what you're saying, John, which is I started to ask myself, what is the writer trying to accomplish in this chunk? What is the emotion that they're trying to trigger? What is the feeling that they're trying to trigger? What's the belief that they're trying to create in my mind? Are they trying to overcome an objection? Are they trying to create urgency here? Is this offering proof to back up a claim? Are they trying to eliminate all other options? For me, like, what is the reason why this copy chunk is here? That's a huge difference from, like, there's a lot of superfluous content or copy in online campagns. Like you read a lot of the copy and you're like, I don't even know why they included this in here. Like they don't even know why. There are oftentimes I ask students, like, why did you include this? And they're like, I thought that I should include it. And I'm like, well, what were you trying to do here? Like, what were you ultimately trying to achieve with this paragraph? And they're like, I'm not really sure. And then I'm like, take it out.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And so I think that, like, right, like the beauty is that, like, on this channel for you, you offer these, these shortcuts for people, really, to, even if they don't understand what's being done with certain phrases, right, certain words, certain language patterns, that those language patterns elicit this feeling, this emotion, this belief, this frame, and that's ultimately, right, if you really want to get deep for a second, that's, it's what the words that we're using, the phrases that we're using, the sentences, the paragraphs, and ultimately the entire letter or VSL. It's ultimately, what are we trying to create in the mind of the prospect? And our words are there to elicit an emotion, a feeling, a belief, a frame, so on. And so, when you read good copy and you read it often and you read a lot of it, you start to pick up on the repeated, emotional triggers, the repeated persuasion devices being used. You also begin to pick up on the order in which, like, do they build credibility first? How early do they build credibility? Where do they overcome objections? How do they overcome objections? How do they segue into overcoming objections? How do they make claims, right? At what part do they make the claims? What language do they use to begin making claims? How much evidence do they provide? And so you start to see you start to get a feel for the persuasion devices, the emotional triggers. You start to get the feel for the order of them, the flow of them, and the way that they're being presented. And that's why I say that, if nothing else, reading passively and actively, reading good copy, doing it regularly, it's a game changer. It really is a game changer. It eventually becomes part of you. It becomes part of you, because when you read enough good copy, right? Like, look, if somebody spent enough time reading your VSLs, right? Like reading through the transcript of your VSLs, and really paying, and then going back through and actively looking at, why did John say this here? And why do I think John, what's the feeling that I'm getting from this? And what's the belief? What's the idea that, and go through. When they sit down to write their VSL, they'll instinctively know when they're off the mark. Like this doesn't feel like John. This doesn't flow like John. This is more hyperbolic than John's. This is not as emotional as John's. The order is completely different from John's. And so I think that is, that in of itself is really just is critical. The other thing, for what it's worth, not to ramble, but the other thing that I think is important is, it's interesting because I had this chat yesterday with David Deutsch, another one of my idols and another one of my inspirations in the copy world, a legend in the world of copy, and especially offline copy. And we were talking about how, you could have a VSL or a sales letter that is well written, meaning from a copy perspective, like it's well written. It doesn't have excessive adjectives or adverbs. It has short sentences. It's low FK score, all the stuff that, right, it flows. It's in the right order, but yet it can still underperform if it's missing some core emotional triggers and drivers that the marketplace really responds to, right? So like if your marketplace really responds to, exclusivity, and you could have a well-organized, a well-written VSL or sales letter, but if it's missing that exclusivity chunk, it will underperform what it could be performing. And so when you study, good copy, especially good copy in your own marketplace, and there's tremendous value in studying good copy outside of your marketplace, but when you study good copy in your marketplace, good copy dialed, optimized from great marketers in direct mail, and you see these repeated chunks, especially over the years. Like the beauty with that, the decade plus swipe file is that, like, you and I we could see the promotions that Dan Kennedy ran for 10 years for, let's say, his live conference, or, Russell Brunson for his, funnel hacking live thing, for multiple years. And we can see what were the chunks that they included in there over the years. Like what were the ones that were in there? All the, okay, exclusivity. Okay. Community. Okay. The value of networking. Okay. So if I am going to go to the same market with the same type of offer for that, well, then I better have that in there because they already proved for me that it's necessary and valuable. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's actually even more important than the words. Again, it's coming down now. I love words. I'm kind of a wordsmith, but what's more important than that is where and how are those words positioned? So what segments are those words in? What's the structure? What's the formula? You and I talked about it at the last mastermind meeting. It's like what makes something copy-wise work is usually the structure, the formula, the patterns that are working underneath it. The words can vary. You even said this in your training we were talking about big ideas and hooks, and I have a whole course on that. And you said, I think it was in the not this last one, but the one before it, the mastermind before it, where you said the unique mechanism people come up with, it's not so important to get the right sounding words. You don't have to sound something that's so pithy and cool, like people go, oh man, that's awesome. It's the idea behind the words. So you can have some bland description that's a unique mechanism, but if the idea takes somebody out of a train of thought that they're currently in, and they think to themselves, maybe that's why I haven't succeeded, because I've never heard of this. I've never heard of this frame, this position, this way of looking at it. This frame of reference is just different. And if you can elicit that, and well, you're halfway there. And what this does, I think, better than anything else that I can think of, is you have proven case history from what is by definition the best copy ever written, and by far and away it has to be the most persuasive, because direct mail is way more expensive. So people can screw up all the time on, I do, yeah, I'm sure you do too, screw up all the time on email campaigns, on sales pages, because we're sending traffic to it, but it's not the same thing. Buying Facebook traffic, sending an email out to your list certainly is a lot cheaper than any of this. If you send out an envelope in the mail, you had better damn well know that what you have in that envelope is going to work, or at least has a high probability, because the cost differential is massive. So if you see something that's been written and tested over a decade, you might want to consider that copy for your online marketing as well, because this is obviously not just for people that are doing direct mail. So
Yeah, no, no, man. I love what you said. And like, look, that's the thing that I tell everybody, like, look, you could, even if you look at just, great marketers and great copywriters online, understand that there is a big chunk of campaigns that don't work. I'd love to say, John, that every campaign that I create is a home run. That's not the case at all. Yeah. There are times when like I'm rushed to put up a campaign, or it's a little test, or we're testing this against this, and I have many flops. I've probably had more flops than people have had campaigns, and so I share that only because that you don't, if you can't confirm that this thing is dialed, tested, and proven, why would you want to model it? And so that's one. The other thing right along with that is, like, look, if you're modeling and swiping, and I want to talk about swiping because there's a lot of negative connotations and a lot of ways that people swipe incorrectly.
Yeah.
Just a second, but if you're modeling and swiping from average, ordinary copy, why would you expect extraordinary results? Right? Like,
right.
You shouldn't. That's crazy. And so you want to make sure that you are, you're swiping and modeling from tested, proven stuff.
Right.
And I know for me, like before we send out a direct mail piece, right, it goes through 3 people on my team. It goes from me, it goes to Damien, who's the head honcho, like the COO of the company. And then it goes to Chris, who is like our director of operations. And like it goes through 3 people to make sure that like all our T's are crossed, all our I's are dotted, like everything is, it goes through multiple iterations in terms of editing and cleaning. And I'm a lot more patient with that because it's going to cost us an arm and a leg to drop it in the mail. And so I share that because you can know that when you get something in the mail from the best marketers, I'm not saying from anybody and everybody, I'm saying from the best marketers, you know that what you're looking at is top shelf copy. Yeah. The other thing that I want to mention real quick, John, is, you said something, you used the word different, right? Like with the mechanism and the big idea and you're like an incredible pro at that. You've been a pro at that longer than I have. In addition to that, I think one of the things that you're also amazing at, and this is important, this is a lesson for everybody, is that you're able to take a common phrase or even a common word, and you're able to find a different way to communicate the same underlying idea. Like, in other words, right, you're not, and this is an important point for everybody, that like, look, if you're using the same words and phrases and descriptors as everybody else in your marketplace, well, your stuff appears and feels immediately to your prospects like everybody else's in your marketplace. And so that's the beauty of also looking at swipes, especially the good stuff, is that you find different ways to communicate the same underlying idea. Like we talked about, John, we've talked about before. I think we were talking about it at our last mastermind, the idea that like people often confuse, they often ask like, what's the difference between the headline and the big idea? And right, I always say like, look, the headline is just the words that you use to express the underlying idea, right? So you might have a headline that says how to grow big tomatoes. Right? A very ordinary, plain, vanilla, run-of-the-mill idea. And maybe you change it from how to grow big tomatoes to how to grow gigantic tomatoes. You just changed a word. You didn't change the underlying idea, right? The idea is the same. You're just changing a word. Now, in this context, right, if everybody else is saying grow big tomatoes, well, what is a different way that we can still communicate that same idea, but not have it appear exactly like everybody else? And I think that you're just so amazing at that. And that's why even though you might talk about whether you're talking about fitness or weight loss or marketing or making $1 bajillion with VSLs, your stuff doesn't feel like everybody else's, not only because of the quality of the copy and the flow and the word choice and all that, but also because, right, you're expressing things differently. And that's important, right? So it's not just we want unique ideas and a unique mechanism. We also want to be able to express the claims, the promises with a little twist.
Yeah.
Looking at a swipe file gives you insight into how other smart, savvy, successful marketers and copywriters are doing that, how they're communicating certain things, but they're using different words and phrases, how they're stimulating those emotional triggers and using, but they're doing it with different words, different phrases. And so it just feels different. They're still triggering all those necessary, strategies or principles: consistency, authority, credibility, reciprocity, urgency, scarcity, all those things. But it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like everybody else's. So it goes under that radar.
So curious here. I'm going to pull this out just to show people sitting at home. This is I literally left it in the plastic because while I have seen inside of this. There you go. This is just one of them.
Bad boy right here.
Right. Yeah. So I am going to open this up on camera right now. And, if I can't tear plastic off, then I don't deserve to be in the fitness space. So, all right. So here we go. This is one of them. So we have well-known mailers. We have volume 2 well-known mailers. We've got I'm just going to. This is just one of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Look at this. Every single thing you can. Every single magalog you can think of in here. From hopefully guys can see this from the beginning of time. No, it's a decade old. So if I'm doing a magalog, I am going nowhere else but here. Why on earth would I do? Because I know, first of all, I trust Todd. Second of all, I know that this is going to have a decade worth of badass material in it. And third, and this is again getting at the most important thing, is I know that the frame that I'm going to find is going to be in there, and it's going to, what is old is new again, in a sense. I mean, so I could take something that was maybe done 8 years ago in a different market, and I go, oh, this is perfect for my market. This makes total sense to me. But I didn't get the inspiration just on my own. I got the inspiration from seeing what other people have done that are experts and pros in this field. And that to me is why I couldn't wait to get this in the mail. I got it now. So I wanted to open it on camera. That's why I haven't opened it yet. But I'm like, yeah, now I can open the whole damn thing.
Yeah, but it's crazy. There are, first of all, like with magalogs, everybody thinks like, I'm not going to do a magalog, right. But the cool thing is that there are chunks. Magalogs are some of the best copy to study because there are these just chunks and bits throughout that you can take, like that you can use to model for chunks of your copy. There are even layout, like there are even formatting nuggets that you get from magalogs. And then, John, in like the well-known mailers, there are 2 volumes of this. So that these are each 800 pages. In this, like this is where I could have organized this in so many different ways, right? And so what I chose to do was just organize it like based on who the people were that were behind these pieces. So like the 2 volumes of well-known mailers are I think the first one in here, like this is a letter from Caleb O'Dowd. The first one in here, there's Caleb, there is Russell Brunson, there's Frank Kern, there's, I think there's Mike Filsame, there, you name it. There's Jay Abraham, there's Agora in here, there's Robert Kiyosaki in here, in these bad boys. And there's just so much. I mean, like this, I don't even know what to say about this bad boy. This is just, this has been so precious to me because this has been a game changer. Being able to see what great marketers are spending big money on and what they're doing over years, like continually, the chunks, the way that they're phrasing it, the flow, the feel, the vibe, the pricing, the structure, what they send to customers offline that nobody else online sees, which is another thing, John, that I just want to mention. Like, look, I like to say, number one, right, with a swipe file like this is going to keep your marketing ideas and specifically the tactical implementation of the core strategies and principles. It's going to keep it fresh. It gives you new insight. The reality is this, John, I said this yesterday to somebody while I was having a conversation, that you could go through this. You can review a page a day and you'd find something new for the next 10 years, literally 10 years, 10 years, 4,000 pages, 4,000 pages.
And here's what my challenge is to anyone watching here that wants to take their copy to the next level. If you were to spend the amount of time that you spend watching television or YouTube videos or whatever your escape vice may be, don't cut it all out because I'm not going to do it. I'm going to you keep some of that fun
Yeah.
in there, but take 30 minutes of that a day, and you were to just do nothing but read through this stuff, just 30 minutes a day, right? That's it. And if you want to be a professional copywriter, that's nothing. That's like, I mean, people that are working in all sorts of full-time jobs do a lot more than 30 minutes a day of training, right? That's a very small price to pay. I guarantee you that within 6 months you'd be a different writer. You would have to be.
Yeah.
It would just get it. That's how we learn. So to make a music analogy here, most people know I'm a musician. You can see the guitar in the background. And when I was learning to read music, even though I still suck at it because I didn't know this when I was learning to read music, was like pulling teeth for me. But then I found out that these pianists that I was playing with in gigs that could read stuff that just it looked like a blank page, it looked like this crazy amount of notes, and they're doing with both hands, obviously. And I'm like, I'm having a hard time doing this on a bass, let alone a piano. I would ask them, like, how on earth do you do that? How do you see that many notes that fast? And they all said the same thing. We don't. We've done this so many times. We see patterns.
Yeah.
So all that the people are doing when they're looking at reading music, unless it's, and there's some exceptions to this, like if you got a really specific, thing, you got to get every single note right. Even then, the guys I knew that do this really well, they're reading patterns. So their eye is starting to see patterns. You would start seeing patterns in this, and you would start writing those patterns in your own copy. It just comes out. That's the way human beings learn. That's why I wanted to share this with you so badly, because I was like, okay, it's been sitting on my couch for 2 weeks. And I was like, okay, I want to do this right. I want to do this on a YouTube live, and we've got I've got a pretty small channel, but it's growing fast, and but we're going to get hopefully a lot of views on this eventually. And but even if we don't, man, I wanted to get it out there for people that really want to take their copy to the next level. This is awesome. And if you want to pick this up, Todd's going to tell you what the deal is here. Go to johnbenson.com/swipe. It's just johnbenson.com, JONBENSON.com/swipe, and you'll get Todd's killer deal. But there is a big caveat here. It's a huge caveat, Todd. And that caveat is you did a Gary Benzavenga. When Gary Benzavenga released his copywriting book, he said there's only, I think it's 5,000 they sold. It was something like that.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Yeah.
look, originally so this was really first created for me when about 15 months ago, I moved finally into a new place, and I knew my wife wasn't going to allow me to bring all those bins of swipes. And so I dedicated a team member full time for 6 weeks to take, I shipped her those bins, literally used a hand truck going into the UPS store, shipped her the gigantic box.
Yeah.
Took her 6 weeks, 120 hours to turn it into these 5, gigantic manuals or binders. I don't even know whatever you want to call them. And then I realized I said to Damien, I really want to have some of these printed for our top one folks, like for our best, for the folks that we're, that I get to mastermind with. And then I just decided, I'm like, you know what? I think it would be fun for no other reason than I think it would be fun to be able to share this with our community and with, folks like you and your community, John. And so it cost us an arm and a leg, but we had 250 copies or 250 sets printed. Obviously, this thing is a beast to print. It's extremely expensive. I think we spent tens of thousands of dollars just in printing alone. And then there is the warehousing of it, and then shipping. It's 22 pounds. Is a bear. So we only had 250 copies, 250 sets printed. Yesterday at noon we went live, meaning those 250 went up for grabs. I believe there are about 115 copies left as of this morning. Once those 115 are gone, that's all she wrote. I have zero plans on ever offering this again, with the exception of providing them to any new top one members that join us. And so whatever it is, 120 copies, 120 sets remaining. If you want one, go to johnbenson.com/swipe. You'll see all the details. You'll also see an incredible bonus package that we put together just for those 250 decade plus swipe file owners. We actually worked with 8 incredible copywriters and marketers, John being one of them, to put together a one-of-a-kind bonus package that's in and of itself worth multiples of what this decade plus swipe file is selling for. The price is $12.50. Shipping is included, so we're covering the gigantic shipping for you. The day after you order right now, tomorrow your copy is going to be shipped out. You get immediate access to to all the bonus trainings, which you can dive into. This is truly, John, I'm not a pitch man, and I hate to pitch, and I hate all, so I'm going to wrap this up in a second, but this is truly a once in a lifetime opportunity to get a one-of-a-kind swipe file that will never be repeated again. I am no longer saving anything. This is enough for me to, this is enough for me for the foreseeable future. I'm not saving anything. This was collected, aggregated, organized over a decade of patience and diligence to put together the absolute best copy, best marketing promotions from the best marketers on the planet that they spent big money to send out. Promotions for everything that you can imagine: low ticket, mid tier, high ticket promotions, letters, postcards, promotions for webinars, for physical products, digital products, for high-end memberships, continuity, affiliate offers, everything under the sun. You will have access to all of it. You'll never run out of marketing ideas, fresh ideas for your copy, for your hooks, for your headlines, for your offers, for your guarantees. You'll learn the flow, the feel, the vibe of great copy so that you can spot when you're off the mark. And because, like John, like you said, because they'll develop the pattern recognition. They'll see the patterns. They'll learn the patterns. It makes writing copy that much easier and quicker. And that's another thing. That's another reason why using a swipe file like this is so enormously valuable. It shortcuts the amount of the time that it'll take you to bang out great copy, because you'll know the patterns, and you'll be in tune with those patterns.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're not starting from just this blank, cursor blinking document, wondering, what do I say first, second, third? Not only will you have stuff that you can model, but you'll know the flow, you'll know the feel, you'll know the timing, you'll know the order of the best copy from the best marketers on the planet. Last thing that I want to say, John, real quick, is we mentioned earlier that I really wanted to not call it a swipe file. I called it a swipe file because because it's the accepted name, and it's the most well-known, it's the known name. But there's a lot of negative connotations associated with swiping. I'm not talking about, and I want everybody to listen to me, I'm not advocating that you steal chunks of somebody else's copy. That's not what this is for, right? You can use phrases, words, you can use intros, right? But this is not to steal huge chunks of copy. I really wanted to call this, and it's for me, it vibes more. I really wanted to call this a muse file, right? A source of inspiration, of ideas, of nuggets that you can then use to put together your own copy, right? But know that it has the same feel, the same flow, the same juice, the same power, and the same sales producing potential, not stealing. And so look at this as a muse file, an inspiration, a source of ideas, a source of new insights, a source of new ways to write copy, new hooks and angles, not a place to steal. If you're willing to use it as a muse for you to have your copy dialed, then I would love to get one of the remaining 120 sets in your hands and have you be one of those proud owners of the 250. And I'm sure at some point we're going to do something special with all 250, since it'll be the 250 plus top 1 folks that have access to this, and that's it. Nobody else is ever going to see inside these pages. And so go to, right, what is it? It's johnbenson.com/250. Swipe.
Swipe. There you go. Yeah. So here's the task that I have for this channel. As you all know, I'm here to help make you awesome copywriters. That's what I want to do. I want to help make you an awesome copywriter. And maybe you already are a great copywriter. You just want to take it to the next level. Maybe you're just starting out. You want to get your foot in the door of copywriting. Well, there's you look on my channel, there's I don't know how many videos we have now, but there's quite a few on all the copywriting training you can think of. And I'm going to keep producing these videos because I love doing this channel. This channel is really built to as a give back to the community of copywriters. And there's going to be some monetization here and there throughout because I'm a copywriter, I'm a businessman, and I'm also a marketer. So if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be walking my talk. I would, if I'm teaching you how to do it and not doing it myself, that's kind of ridiculous. But in so doing, I want to keep bringing you absolutely killer ideas and killer propositions for you to consider. So the killer idea here, even if you can't take Todd up on this offer, it may be cash is high, maybe it's just not the right fit for you. But the killer idea for you to walk away with, whether you take it or not, is that you need to be looking at the best copy that you can possibly look at repetitively. So instead of reading copywriting books, or even, dare I say, taking a copywriting course, even though I love my copywriting course, it's a good course. If you're going to take one, that's a good one to take. But instead of doing just that, do what the musicians taught me to do in music school that I ignored. And I struggled for the rest of my career reading music because I just refused to do it as repetitively as they suggested. Just read 30 minutes a day. That's what they were telling me to do. Well, I'd rather play 30 minutes a day. And so I never became a great reader. I became a decent player, but never a great reader. If you want to become a great copywriter, I want you to read copy 30 minutes a day. That's all you have to. Now, if there are guys that are going to take this and they're going to go, I'm going to do it 16 hours a day. I'm going to be the Jaco Pastorius. If you get that reference, let me know, of copy. I'm going to, we're playing 16 hours a day for years, right? Well, if you want to do that, great. I hope that you aren't, don't have a wife and kids or a husband and kids that will hate you for that. But hopefully you can make that work with your life. But 30 minutes a day. Just 30 minutes a day reading copy, make it 5 days a week if you want to. 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, reading great copy. And the position I want you to consider that you have not considered until you watch this video is the best copy you can read right here is in these books. Now, I'm not just saying just because Todd has this for sale. What I'm saying is swipe files of direct mail, specifically direct mail. Now, I'm not a direct mail guy. I've written one piece in my entire career for direct mail. So if I knew how to write this stuff, I'd be the one telling you, hey, just follow what I'm doing. I don't. That's not my. Now, could I? Yes. I know the persuasion techniques to do that. But where would I go if I wanted to write a direct mail piece, Todd? I go right here. If I want to send direct mail out for Copy Pro, where am I going to go? I'm going to go to you and here. That's exactly. I'm telling you exactly the truth. Exactly what I would do. But if I wanted to become good at it, and if I wanted to become good at copy, what I would do is read the copy that had to produce the highest amount of return because it's the most expensive to produce. Does that make sense? That's what made this. That's the secret of the swipe. So it's not just any swipe. It's the swipes that have been mailed out. And so Todd alluded to this. I'm going to go ahead and say it because I'm always one to break the fourth wall here, metaphorically speaking. What he's trying to say, I think, is that these are the marketers that do online pieces as well, but this is the stuff that they can't do online a lot of times, or that they have to prove offline to make the revenue, to get the real revenue. So they're online. I know a lot of these guys, a lot of their online stuff is nowhere near as lucrative as this stuff is because they can say more. They have to persuade more. It's much higher dollar. So if you want to get really good at copy, you have to study direct mail. You really do. And that's the secret that hardly anyone will tell you. But you can take all the techniques from direct mail. Like me, I've sent out one direct mail piece in my whole life. Not a big forte of mine, but I can do it because I know the skills to do it. So that's why I'm encouraging you to do that today. I wanted to share that information. Also to have Todd on the channel because I'm going to start a whole interview series on the channel, and I hope that I want to kick it off with Todd because Todd's a friend and a mentor, and also just an awesome guy. And let me tell you, the cat can write copy. He can write copy, man. He's really good at this stuff. So you might want to listen to what he has to say.
Listen, I let me say this. Let me end with this on a personal note. So I appreciate that. I'm honored to hear you say that. It's no secret, man. I've been a huge fan of yours for a long time. I'm so grateful that I get to call you a friend. one of the things, just a total personal note, maybe you can edit this out if you want or leave it in. I'm fine
It's
either
live, so
later on. So that's cool. Well, all
yeah,
good.
yeah.
And so, one of the things that people ask me, who in my life do I admire, like who's an individual that I admire, not the most, but who's somebody that I admire. And usually I always go to Mark Ford. And the reason why I go to Mark Ford is not what most people think. Mark Ford's the guy behind the Agora companies. He's a legendary direct response marketer. He's got a piece in 100 plus businesses. He's got 18 books published, Wall Street Journal, New York Times bestselling author. The guy he's got more money than he knows what to do with.
Yeah.
But the reason why Mark is somebody that I admire tremendously is because he is what I consider to be a true Renaissance man. In other words, right? Mark is he writes nonfiction. He writes poetry. He reads poetry. He is an art collector. He has a non-profit like community center in Nicaragua. He's a successful real estate investor with many, many properties. He's a successful, investor in the equity markets. He's obviously a successful entrepreneur. He's a competitive jujitsu dude. And he's got a great family. Same, wife, kids. And so he's this all around. He is a true Renaissance man, and he's extremely grounded. Why am I sharing that here? I'm sharing that because I really consider you the same thing, John. And I say nothing. I never say anything that I don't mean, man. And so, number one, right? Like for what it's worth, dude, you're physically in tremendous shape, which is a given. So your health, your fitness, your knowledge of health and fitness and nutrition and supplementation and pharmacology is second to none. If I had a question, I would probably go to you before anybody else. Probably my primary care physician. I'd go to you first. You are an incredible, obviously, copywriter, marketer, successful entrepreneur, presenter, musician. You studied philosophy. And you're married. You're a married man now. You travel. You're well traveled. Canada, Miami. That's inspiring, man, to me. And I admire that tremendously, dude. And so such an honor always, man, to get to spend time with you, to be on your channel, to be with you, man. And so yeah, I love it, man. Love it and appreciate you, brother.
Thank you very, very much, Todd. Thank you very, very much. I don't know what to say to that, but other than thank you. And obviously the feeling is mutual. So I wanted to, I don't know if this is copacetic because I'm not familiar. I don't have a vibe for YouTube lives yet. In fact, this is my second one that I've ever done. So you got a few seconds away from questions because we got a few questions coming in.
Yeah,
here.
For sure. I'd love to take some questions.
So
sure.
We're getting, okay. So we gave out the wrong URL because I was given the wrong URL. So
I have a URL for you. What you can do is you can go to, let me just make sure before I do this.
We got it in there now, Todd. It was just, I said, swipe. It's johnbenson.com/swiped, SWIPED. I'm not really sure why that happened, but it did happen. Okay. So link is fixed now, I'm being told. So yeah, so this is awesome. So let me just make sure that we got obviously a lot of compliments in here, and thank you for everybody that hey Christopher, hey Renato, oh yeah, Brazil. It was insane. Renato, he's from Brazil. That was like that was 600 people in that room. It was just crazy. All right, so I'm just making sure that we don't have any questions other than the link being wrong.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, John, you also, just as a side note, while you're doing that, I believe, and I believe that you have an invite next year to speak in Brazil in front of, I believe it's 7,000 next year.
So I think so. Yeah. It's going to be crazy. I mean, I know that there was 6,000 in this one, and there was 600 in that one room. That was crazy. It was nuts because I mean there were people crammed up on the stage. It was kind of wild. I do have one thing to say here, guys. I just real quick. Okay, now we got the force swipe fixed. I'm not really sure what's going on there, but now hopefully it will work for everybody else. Todd, is there some way that Dean wants to know if there's some way I can reach you? And
Reach me?
yes, what's the best way to reach you? What's the best way?
Oof. You can send an email. The best way to reach me is to Facebook message me, and somebody will get that to me within like 24 hours.
Yeah.
So just go to Facebook and look up Todd Brown. You'll find me on there and shoot me a message, and then it'll get to me within 24 hours.
Okay, cool. And also, Ken Thias, I believe is how you say his name. He's from Brazil. He would like to buy the swipe file. Anyway, do you ship to Brazil?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. We've had people in, I think 11 different countries already, take advantage of the swipe file. So yeah, we'll eat the additional cost for you. There's no additional charge in shipping. And so we'll eat that for you. And so, yeah, we love Brazil. And
Yeah,
so,
we do.
yeah, we love Brazil. And so for sure.
Yeah, Brazil's been awesome, and I look forward to heading back down there, guys. So, Todd, we're at the top of the hour. I want to say thank you again for spending an hour with us today and sharing of your knowledge and time, and also letting people know about this, because this is a rare thing. There's going to be 250 printed and sold, and that's it. So, you guys jump on it if you want to go there. johnbenson.com/swipe will tell you everything you need to know. And hopefully, by the way, just so you know, every interview we have,
it was johnbenson.com/swiped with the D on the end.
they're telling me it's fixed now. As /swipe is now working now. So either
okay,
one, take the one that you like the best, and you're going to be good. You're going to be.
You have an option. You have an option.
All right, but so not every interview I'm going to be doing. In fact, I'm going to ask Todd to come back on the channel and do an interview that's strictly copy related. But I did want to let this, because it's literally a one-day thing, so I want to make sure you guys know about it. So everybody say thank you to Todd, and I say thank you to Todd, and great. We're signing off. John Benson, Sales Copy Secrets, here to make you unignorable as always. We'll talk to you soon.